So, I wanted to do a quick review after, now that I've played about just short of 13 hours of Stalker 2, Heart of Chernobyl. And I'm playing it using GeForce Now because the first time I tried to play it on my own system, there was I wasn't super crazy about how it was running on my system. Although it did run and I could play it, I just wanted the full graphical experience. And there's not too much input lag on GeForce Now, so pretty satisfied with using that uh, platform or app, whatever you call it, in order to play the game. Uh, Personally, I'm enjoying the game. Um, I tend to play it for about an hour at a time, just because that's what my gaming habits have become like. I've got something going on with my right mouse hand, um, so if I play for too long, then I feels like I pay for it. So, um, as I said, I'm enjoying it. Of course, I've been benefiting from, what was it, 3 patches that they've put out since the game was released. And like there's more of an A-life experience than there initially was, I guess. Um, uh, for me, that wasn't something that I probably would have been annoyed by. Like the lack of the full A-life experience, just because I've never really gotten far at all in any of the Stalker titles, including Anomaly, even set um, at least set at the easiest difficulty level in Stalker Anomaly. I'm not sure about the very first Stalker, whether I could have gotten farther at an easier difficulty level. But yeah, I had trouble advancing in that game. um, One thing I like about Stalker 2 is it seems like it's pretty easy to either through my headset or through visual cues. It seems like it's pretty easy to sense when there's an anomaly nearby, and then of course throwing bolts, I can get a better idea where those anomalies are. Um, Whereas I think in those earlier Stalker titles I had more trouble, or maybe less patience, with trying to navigate a map where it was basically a huge anomaly minefield. Um, in this title, I guess maybe because my gaming sessions are shorter in length, I'm able to exercise more patience with the anomalies, and I'm taking a more careful approach. And not just because of the anomalies, but also because of the mutants and the armed human AI. Even at an easy difficulty level, you can get in trouble. Although I think playing at rookie difficulty, which is what I'm at, because I I had asked the developers at GSC Game World through some public social media post or comment or something, maybe on YouTube, that they provide an even easier difficulty level, because I didn't want my lack of skill to prevent me from enjoying all of the content that they had worked so hard creating. I eventually want to be able to get to Pripyat and tour Pripyat as if I was a real life stalker uh, in Ukraine. And but I'm not as young as some of those college age guys that are making those trips into the uh, Chernobyl exclusion zone. So doing that in real life, uh, it might be possible for me to do it, but it would probably be much easier to do it in a video game, even with all the dangers in this video game. So, um, anyway. um, so, uh, the quests and side quests seem to be working for me. I did encounter one bug where a storm, I assume it was an emission, but I don't know because maybe it was in Stalker Gamma or I don't know, but I've seen some video where I thought the emissions were kind of more of a red color, and this seemed just like more dusty or overcast, or just like a regular thunderstorm or electrical storm almost. So I'm not sure if it was an electrical storm or an emission, because I didn't seem to be getting damaged by just standing out in the open. So maybe it was just a regular electrical storm and not an emission. I don't know. Or maybe I wasn't getting damaged because I was on rookie difficulty. I don't know. Again. But, one, so the bug that I encountered was that the storm just never seemed to end. I think I went through like a day and a half of day-night cycle waiting for the thing to end, and then finally, I think reloading from a previous save, it went away. Another thing that I felt like I should mention, because combat AI is a pet peeve of mine, is that while I was sheltering from a storm underneath a bridge, and I was, well up underneath the bridge toward one end of the overhang, so that only like maybe my lower legs were visible. My legs were getting shot by human AI, even though they hadn't like identified me. Like, how could they identify me just by my legs? I couldn't see them at all, and yet they were seeing my legs and just decided to open fire on my legs. Like, they never asked me to come out and show myself or identify myself. They just started shooting as if they could identify my whole person and my faction just based on my legs. And I don't think that's realistic. So I've asked the developers to hopefully alter the AI so that it would have to see your head or torso before they could identify whether they should engage you or not. Now, if they've already identified that you're a threat, and then you go into hiding, and then they see just your legs visible, then I wouldn't mind if they shot up your legs. But unless they're just on a spree killing everything, I don't think it makes any sense that they would just shoot at a pair of legs that they hadn't identified yet. So that was, I don't know if you would call that a bug as much as an insufficiency in AI simulation or combat AI simulation, but that's something I would work on. And I've seen like similar problems in other games like Ground Branch. Fortunately, Ground Branch added the ability to set, although I'm not sure it's in there right now because of a recent update, but they added the ability to set where the enemy AI would target. Because that's something that goes back to, I'm not sure if it was in Rainbow Six 1, but it was definitely in Rogue Spear, that the enemy AI would target your head. Even in situations where a soldier or even a special operator would not be targeting your head at 200 meters, like with an assault rifle with iron sights. They're going to aim center of mass, and you can even find videos on YouTube where you've got former Delta operators that are come right out and say that they would aim center of mass in a given situation. um, if it's room to room CQB, I can see where especially counter-terrorist operatives would be trained to aim for the head. But not in open field combat unless that's the only thing exposed, like a soldier who's popping his head over a trench. Yeah, then you're going to shoot at the only thing available, which is the head. But normally soldiers are trained to aim center of mass, which is around the solar plexus area. So that's something I would like to see improved in the game. I had one one quest where I might even be a side quest where I had to retrieve a body from an area that had anomalies around it, and I thought I was safely moving between two anomalies, which I knew where both of them were, but I guess the extent of the anomaly is something I missed, or maybe the body I was dragging went into the anomaly and pulled me with it. But anyway, it pulled me into the anomaly, and then I dropped the body in the anomaly, and to pick the body back up you have to hold down F, so it takes like a full, I don't know, 1 or 2 seconds, about 2 seconds I think, in order to pick the body up. Well, you can discharge the anomaly, walk into the anomaly, try to take the time to pick the body up, and by then the anomalies like come back and you get zapped again and you drop the body in the anomaly again. So it became seemingly impossible to me to retrieve this body from the anomaly, because the body wasn't initially in an anomaly, it was just surrounded by anomalies. So I just gave up that quest because I was using up med kits, attempting this. I probably should have reverted to a previous save point and attempted it again. Um, but I just chalked it up to the story, like, hey, buddy, I tried and forget it. Now it's impossible. So I'm probably missing out on something there because I could have searched the body and taken whatever it had. um, I could have double-crossed the guy that wanted me to fetch the body because he seemed to be somewhat of a double-crosser himself. But I just walked away from the situation. And then what's strange is he got into it with a bloodsucker, but it seems like he was an essential NPC or something, and the bloodsucker couldn't kill him. And I observed this, and I observed the altercation between the two, and the bloodsucker just kept taking wipes, and it seemed like the NPC was out of ammo and unable to do anything, and it just kept going on, and so that seemed a bit buggy. So anyway, I just walked away from the situation, but I'm digging it so far. I think, as with a lot of releases, I think a lot of the initial negative reaction, a lot of the negative reviews, they're going to be replaced with a lot of positive feedback. And you can see on Steam, most of the feedback is positive. So that's my 13-hour review. I would like to have mod support through the Steam Workshop, because I would like to have the ability to find different weapons that were in the original game that aren't in the game now, and maybe there's a good explanation for that because of where the game is on the timeline. For example, the OTS 14 Groza, I think, turned out to not be that popular, and I don't think you see many people using it anymore. So maybe it doesn't have although I do think it might be in Stalker 2, but that would just be an example of like some of the weapons I'd like to see in the game. Like anyway, so but like I said, it seems like that one actually is in the game. So, but I could probably think of some that were in the original game that aren't in this game. But I just like a wider selection of weapons, as long as they're able to use common magazines. Oh, another thing I wanted to point out about this game is that these developers, much like Ubisoft in the Far Cry games, especially in Far Cry 3 and onwards, they're really good about hiding loot. And that's one of my complaints about Scum, is that the developers of Scum have really needed to be coaxed into hiding loot in on Scum Island in hard to find and hard to reach places. There are vast stretches of land on Scum Island where there's just nothing. And while that's a good place to hide your base, it doesn't give the world a very lived-in feel, because what happens when you have especially like an official server that's always maxed out at maybe 40-60 players or something, you'll find boxes of loot hidden in a bush. Less so in vertical locations, but as an admin on a scum server, I often hide loot in hard to reach and hard to find places, to encourage exploration, because the game does have a vertical element to it that Stalker 2 also has, where you can be rewarded for climbing up to locations that you would think would be inaccessible, or that your common person would just avoid. And and the problem in Scum is that the players learn that there's just nothing to be found in these hard to reach, hard to find locations, so they never go exploring there. And the problem with that is that some of the best scenic views in Scum are in those locations. So I really want players to explore Scum Island. So I try to put loot there to encourage them to, but like, for example, it seems like a lot of players just don't understand how vertical Scum can be. Like, once you learn the trick that if you open a door outwards, you can climb up on the edge of the door and thus access a roof, and then from that roof access another roof, and so forth, then you begin to find hidden areas and places where you can hide loot. And some smart players will do that. But on a low population server, you won't find that because you don't have the players engaging in that kind of ingenuity. And I think the developers using, procedural generation should have like tiny little temporary camps or hidden loot boxes spawned on the map to make it look lived in, to fit the lore of the game. Because if you're on a low population server and there's only 2 human players there, that's not fitting the lore of the game. And that's another reason why I say that the game desperately has, for years, desperately needed opposing or potentially opposing AI with ranged attack abilities. Because and the new puppet spawn system has really damaged an aspect of gameplay in Scum, and that is that there was a time when there was one reason on a low population server where you might have a sniper rifle or a long range weapon, and that was where you could snipe puppets in a POI or even in an open field from a long distance with a sniper rifle. And while those puppets weren't an immediate threat, you could somewhat clean out an area before you went in. Well, now with the new puppet spawning system, you don't have puppets spawning in at 600 meters away. So there's almost no reason for a sniper rifle in the game. The only reason you need long-range weapons in the game would be for other players, or possibly now for drop ships and sentries, which I think are kind of uber against your typical scum character. So I really hope that they can bring in a potentially opposing AI with ranged attacks. And you could say, well, okay, if a freshie, a naked, whatever you want to call him, spawns in, a new prisoner spawns into the map, and then he is unfortunate to encounter one of those random AIs with a ranged attack, he can get taken out um, from 300 meters by a ranged weapon when he only has an axe, like a stone axe. That can, in my opinion, easily be fixed by just threat matching the AI spawning in with the player, right? Like, don't spawn in a guy with a 338 Lapua Magnum sniper rifle against a guy with a stone axe. It's not that hard to figure out. So, but the devs, I don't know, the devs of Scum, I don't know how much they actually listen. In some ways, the game improves, and I still love the game, but Stalker 2, of course, it's a single player experience, not multiplayer. It is more balanced. However, its spawn system is very much like the new Scum spawn system, and I don't know if that's a limitation of the Unreal Engine, because I seem to get an inkling from a video I watched that suggested that it might be, and maybe that's because they're catering to consoles. But PC gamers don't get a PC because they want to play with the limitations of a console game. But I don't know if the publishers of games care all that much, because, they're after sales, not after the original vision of the game, possibly. I believe the GSC game world, has a vision where they want to remain faithful to the Stalker experience, but I don't know that maybe Microsoft does, or that a publisher, whoever that might be, does. So as the game looks so far, I I don't really notice the fact that there aren't enemies at 300 meters, but that might be because I don't have any optics that really help me to see out that far, which I should be able to, because I used to shoot my service rifle in the Army at 300 meters with iron sights. So realistically, I should be able to see enemies at 300 meters with my eyeballs in the game, with the unaided eye. But apparent ranges of targets, or the objects may be closer than they appear when you look in this mirror. The because of widescreen monitors, they're from testing I've done in other games, there's no FOV setting that is faithful to every distance. You know, it's a skewed um, it's a skewed perspective, I guess you would say, where you might set the FOV so that the field of vision, so that a target at 300 meters, a man-sized target at 300 meters, looks like a man-sized target at 300 meters on your display. However, then you can get distortion that happens, say, at 100 meters or at 600 meters, where targets at those ranges don't look like they're supposed to at those ranges. So it's like you're able to zero or calibrate your FOV to a realistic appearance only at one distance, and then when you start moving away from that distance, it starts to get distorted and unrealistic. And from what I think one of the developers at Bohemia Interactive said, I think it was Ondrej Spanel, I could be wrong, it was so many years ago. I think he basically said that it because of widescreen displays, it was not possible to have a 100% faithful FOV setting. So anyway, but in a game where all the bad guys spawn at 100 meters, or they're actually drawn in at 100 meters, even though they may actually move off to 200 or 300 meters, and they're still tracked in the game, they blink in and out at 100 meters. That's that's like pistol range. That's the effective range of a pistol. You know, but you've got assault rifles and sniper rifles in this game, and then you've got targets blinking in and out at only 100 meters. 100 meters is an easy shot with iron sights on, with an assault rifle in real life. So you can get up on a tower in Stalker 2 and you can look around and you can see all the landmarks, but you're not, that I know of, you're not going to be seeing targets at 600 meters, you know, when observing from the top of a tower. So you can see the scenery, but you can't see the things that are supposed to be living in that scene. And I guess that's because of that limitation of the Unreal Engine, or it's because they have to cater to consoles, or they did it because of optimization, which is allegedly why they did it in Scum. Even though the puppet system worked just fine the way it was in Scum. The way it worked in Scum before was you had like you would set the delay in number of seconds as to when puppets would spawn in a region, and those three regions were wild, which wild is just like in an open field. Exterior, which is like in a POI or a town. It would be the puppets or zombies that are outside the buildings. And then you had indoor or interior, and that would be inside any kind of building or bunker complex or maybe even caves. I don't know. I've never seen any puppets in a cave. So with the server settings, I could customize it so that I would set interior puppets to maybe spawn at like 5 seconds or something, because you didn't necessarily want to go rolling into a town and tax your system with both exterior and interior puppets spawning in at the same time. Now, rolling into the town, you would want the exterior puppets to be immediately visible, preferably. But if you were to drive into a town really quick, bail out of your vehicle, and jump into a building through a window, you didn't necessarily need a puppet to be in that first building. So you could have other puppets spawn in to other buildings in that town, after 5 seconds, after 10 seconds. It didn't really matter because you had no line of sight on those puppets. Um, so, and then you could set the cooldowns. And normally I would set the cooldown to like 2 to 4 hours on an indoor location, because my reasoning was that once you cleared a room or a building, puppets at that time, before they could break down doors or vault through windows, they the puppets at that time weren't going to be able to populate the interior of that building within that amount of time. It just didn't seem realistic. For exterior, I think I would set that to like half an hour, because my reasoning is, or was, that the puppets that were wild out in the fields or in the forests might shamble in to town within half an hour. So it seemed reasonable that more puppets could spawn in around half an hour after you cleared the town. And then for wild, I think I set it to like 15 minutes, because my reasoning was you could have missed a puppet in a bush, not 100 meters away. So even if you cleared a field, more puppets could have shambled in from some bushes in the tree line or something. It wasn't that big of a deal. So that system worked fine. Plus, it would allow you to get some distance away and then snipe the puppets from hundreds of meters away and partially clear out a POI before you went in. But they went chasing the all-elusive optimization that kids who have never programmed a game in their lives constantly cry for, because they want to run a game on their toaster of a system. The devs at Gamepires for Scum have just constantly started limiting various features of the game, chasing after this ever elusive ideal called optimization. You will very rarely hear or read a gamer say, "Oh, this game is optimized perfectly." And you will rarely see every member of a community of players of a game say that a game is optimized perfectly, because it's an ideal. You can't achieve that sort of perfection, right? You tell the players what the recommended system requirements are, and if they don't have a system that meets those recommended requirements, you don't listen to those players when they call for optimization. You do not nerf the features of your game to appease players with systems that don't meet the system requirements. It's as simple as that. But you might have, who knows, producers who say, hey, we need to get the sales that will come from, little Billy on his toaster of a PC, so that we make as much money as possible. So go ahead and nerf the features of this game, break your original vision for the game in order to get more sales. Maybe that's what's happening. Anyway, it's enough to piss you off. So I think that's where some of the discontent originally happened with Stalker 2, is that some features of the experience were nerfed in order to optimize the game more, and it may have been a requirement of Microsoft in order to run the game on the Xbox. Because I know Microsoft imposed various limitations upon Bohemia Interactive when Codemasters was wanting Operation Flashpoint Elite, to be released for the classic Xbox. For example, in Operation Flashpoint Elite, you got a nerfed version of the mission editor or scenario editor, because it wasn't just for single player missions or even co-op missions. You could also create adversarial missions or game types using that mission editor. So it's probably better to call it a scenario editor. Anyway, they on that mission editor, I guess to appease Microsoft, they had to remove some aspects, like I think triggers and I think synchronization. So you got this like LITE light version of the mission editor on that title. Nevertheless, we were able to come up with ways to make missions where various elements of it were still randomized. And that was it. There were some other aspects of mission editing that in the original editor you can make more randomized, that you weren't able to make randomized in the Operation Flashpoint Elite editor. But I forgot how I did it. I found a way to randomize missions. Took a little bit of mental contortionism, but I was able to do it. And that that title was not distributed the way it should have been. Like, each GameStop may have had 1 or 2 copies of that game. Meanwhile, for some very strange reason, computer game or console game shops in Finland would have like 20 copies of the game. For some reason, Codemasters UK flooded Finland with copies of the game, and everywhere else, I guess, didn't see that many copies. Maybe it was because it was just easier to ship to Finland because they weren't that far away. I don't know. Very strange. So that game wasn't as popular as it could have been, and let me tell you, it could have been very popular, but with the players that did manage to get a copy, Operation Flashpoint Elite was extremely popular because it was immensely replayable. But Microsoft didn't want replayable games on its Xbox. It wanted repeat sales. It wanted players to eventually be satisfied with a title and to move on to another title, thus paying for another title generating sales. So, and the thing about Operation Flashpoint Elite was that it was so replayable because of the mission editor. And there were lots of players who were spending hours upon hours playing Operation Flashpoint Elite because there was no other game like it on the classic Xbox. And that's kind of the situation that the Xbox and the PlayStation 5 are experiencing with Arma Reforger, which is the most recent version of Arma, Operation Flashpoint, Cold War Crisis, and Resistance, being the first titles in that franchise, in the Arma franchise, which they had to rename Arma because of, a disintegrated relationship with the publisher Codemasters. So so now once again there's a situation on consoles where Arma Reforger is immensely replayable, and there's no other game like it on the PlayStation. So I'm pretty confident you're going to have a lot of players on PlayStation playing nothing but Reforger and not buying other titles for the PlayStation. So, and publishers have ways of, dealing with that. You can, cause there to be less server support. You can introduce bugs to the game that piss off the community. It's kind of like when you have a really you have a sci-fi series on television and it's really popular, but it costs a lot to make, and they don't really want to go on spending that much money making that series, but the fans clamor for another season of that sci-fi. Well, then what do? Well, then they start using crap writing, and they just sabotage the series so that, okay, we'll make maybe 8 more episodes in the next season, but then it'll be absolute garbage. So so then the fans will stop clamoring for more of that expensive series. They have ways of manipulating your opinions, so that they can make a buck or not spend so much making a buck. They can they can spend less making a reality show, and you're mindless, you're bored. If all you have to watch are reality shows, you'll watch reality shows rather than expensive sci-fi shows. So they do the same thing with games. If a game is really replayable and players aren't playing anything else, they have a way of dealing with that community. So something to look out for in the future. Now, hopefully, no sabotage happens with Stalker 2 and that it continues to improve. I know with the PC-based mods of the earlier games, apparently they just continue to improve and just get better and better. And that's one reason I think mod support is such an important feature for any title, because on the one hand, maybe if mod support enables players to keep playing the old title rather than buy the new title, maybe that's a case where mod support's not such a great thing for a development studio or their publisher. On the other hand, if more people are playing the old title because of mods, then that generates more faithfulness to the franchise and may lead to more purchases of the new title, especially if it has mod support. So, something else to think about. Anyway, this was meant to be a 13-hour review, and instead I went off on somewhat related tangents, got a little long-winded, um, but I hope maybe you gathered something from what I said or revealed, and you may not agree with what I said. It's okay if you don't. I'm just expressing my opinion. I like Stalker 2. This is the first in the series that I've really been able to enjoy, even though I'm apparently not uber enough to have done well in the previous titles. And to me, that's a great thing because I really want to enjoy and appreciate all of the artwork, because really it is art that has gone into making this game. And yeah, so I'll just leave it there. Um, if you haven't given Stalker 2 a try, you can always, and maybe it's because your system won't run it that well, give GeForce Now a try, because it's working for me, and it's enabling me to enjoy the game.